Most people spend their lives trying to improve the human experience, fix their habits, heal their wounds, get more control over their thoughts and emotions. But what if the real breakthrough doesn't come by improving the human, but by transcending it altogether? Joel Goldsmith's message was not about becoming a better person. It was about discovering that you are not a person at all, at least not in the way the world defines it. You are not merely a body, not just a mind, and certainly not a bundle of problems waiting to be solved. You are divine, spiritual, infinite, and awakening means coming to that realization, not as a concept, but as a living experience. There is a presence within you, untouched by fear, lack, or limitation. It's not something you earn or strive toward. It's who you already are, the Christ within. This Christ consciousness isn't about religion, titles, or beliefs. It's a state of awareness in which you live in direct communion with the infinite. And yet, most people live their entire lives without ever accessing it, because they're caught in the illusion of being only human. In this message, drawn from Joel Goldsmith's profound spiritual teachings, we explore what it really means to awaken, to shift from human consciousness to divine realization. It's not about doing more, it's about being differently. If you've ever sensed that there's something deeper calling you, something beyond effort, fear, or striving, then perhaps this isn't just another message. Perhaps it's a quiet call to wake up from the dream of separation and remember the truth. The Christ is already within you, waiting for you to listen. One of the most liberating and radical truths Joel Goldsmith shared was this: you are not merely a human being trying to reach God. You are already one with God, because your true nature is spiritual. Most of us have been conditioned from birth to believe that we are limited physical beings. We see ourselves as bodies with names, personalities, histories, and problems. We try to fix ourselves, improve our lives, and get closer to God through effort, morality, or religion. But Goldsmith's message turned all of that on its head. He taught that our real spiritual journey does not begin by improving the human self, but by awakening to the fact that the human self is not who we really are. Behind the masks of personality, emotion, and physicality lies something deeper, your true identity, which is infinite, timeless, and untouched by the conditions of the world. This identity is not something you create. It is something you awaken to. It is already whole. It is already perfect. And it is spiritual. This realization is not an intellectual belief or a religious dogma. It is a shift in consciousness. It's the moment you stop identifying yourself by what you see in the mirror or what you've been through in life and begin to know yourself as the I that is one with God. That I is the Christ within, not the historical Jesus, but the divine essence that lives in every soul. Goldsmith would often say that there is no God and something else. That means there is not God plus you, God plus a problem, or God plus a person in a body. There is only God, expressing itself as individual being, and that individual being is you. But this truth is hidden behind a lifetime of conditioning that says otherwise. So we live as though we are separate, weak, limited, trying to reach something higher, when in fact, we are already that which we seek. The awakening begins when we drop the false belief that we are merely human. The more we accept our spiritual nature, the more the illusions of fear, sickness, lack, and limitation begin to fall away. You are not a human being with a spiritual life. You are a spiritual being temporarily having a human experience. That one realization begins to unravel the ego's grip on your identity. You no longer chase after validation or fear death. You begin to rest in something deeper, the awareness that you are already whole, because you are already one with God. That is the beginning of Christ, consciousness, not striving, not trying, not becoming, just realizing. And once you begin to live from that awareness, everything changes. You don't fight the world. You don't cling to it either. You walk through it with peace, knowing that you are not of it. That is the gift of knowing you are not merely human, you are divine. To understand Christ, consciousness is to enter into a completely different way of being. a dimension of awareness that sees through the illusions of the world and rests in the truth of God's presence within. Joel Goldsmith often said that Christ is not a person, not limited to Jesus of Nazareth, and not bound by any religious form. Christ is a universal principle, the eternal nature of God individualized in you. When you awaken to that truth, not as a theory but as lived experience, you are entering Christ consciousness. It is the state in which the presence of God becomes so real, so inwardly known, that you no longer feel separate from your source. Most people live in what could be called human consciousness, a state dominated by fear, desire, effort, and duality. In that state, God seems distant, and the world seems real, threatening, or seductive. We pray to a God out there, hoping for help, hoping for healing, hoping for change. But when you begin to awaken to Christ consciousness, you no longer seek God as something outside of yourself. You begin to realize God is not just with you, God is your very life. The Christ within is the light, the presence, the I. That has always been there, quietly waiting for you to turn inward and recognize it. This shift is not something you create by force. It happens in stillness. It happens in silence. That is why Joel Goldsmith placed so much emphasis on meditation, on the practice of inner listening. In those moments of quiet surrender, when you release the noise of the mind and the demands of the ego, you may begin to sense something deeper, a calm, a clarity, a presence that is not emotional, but eternal. That is the beginning of Christ consciousness, not a feeling, but a knowing, a sacred awareness that you and the Father are one. As this awareness deepens, you begin to see the world differently. You respond to life from a place of peace, not panic. You no longer react to appearances, whether lack, illness, or conflict, because you know they are not the final reality. Christ consciousness sees beyond form to essence. It knows that God is all, and God is here, and nothing can oppose the presence and activity of God. Living from this consciousness doesn't mean escaping the world or denying it. It means walking through life with a deep inner knowing that the power that governs the universe is the same power that lives in you as you. You begin to live not from personal will or effort, but from divine flow. Decisions become clearer. Healing becomes natural. Compassion deepens, and fear loses its grip. Christ consciousness is not reserved for saints or mystics. It is the birthright of every soul. It's already within you, waiting to be realized. The journey is not about becoming more spiritual. It's about removing the veils of illusion and remembering who you already are. In that remembrance, you awaken not to a new religion, but to eternal life now. In a world that constantly demands noise, motion, and mental activity, the idea that silence could be the key to spiritual awakening seems counterintuitive. Yet Joel Goldsmith taught that silence is not only important, it is essential. In fact, without silence, there can be no real spiritual unfoldment. Goldsmith emphasized that the presence of God cannot be heard, known, or felt through the intellect or external effort. It is only in the quiet stillness of inner awareness that the soul begins to awaken to what has always been true, that God is here now and within. This silence is not emptiness, it is fullness. It is the space where the divine speaks, not in words, but in direct knowing. Most people approach God through words, through prayers, affirmations, scriptures, and songs. These are all beautiful expressions, but they belong to the surface. They prepare the mind, they lift the heart, but they are not the final destination. The deep spiritual life begins when the words fall away and we become still, not just physically, but inwardly. When the mind stops striving, when the emotions settle, and when we no longer seek to get anything from God, something begins to happen. In the sacred silence, a new awareness is born, not something created by thought, but something that simply is. Joel called this the still small voice. It is not dramatic, it is not loud, but when it comes, it leaves no doubt. It is peace itself, It is God revealing itself within you. Meditation, in Goldsmith's view, was not about controlling thoughts or visualizing outcomes. It was the practice of resting in God. It was about letting go of effort, letting go of asking, letting go of even trying to meditate correctly. True meditation, as he described it, is the art of receptivity. You sit quietly, turn within, and wait, not with expectation, but with openness. In that deep stillness, something begins to move, not your thoughts, but your consciousness. You begin to perceive what the five senses cannot perceive, the presence of God as your very life. Over time, this practice changes everything. The more you enter silence, the more you begin to carry that silence with you. You find that answers come without asking, guidance arises without effort, peace surrounds you in situations that once caused fear. It's not because you've figured things out, it's because you've touched something deeper than thought. You've made contact with your source. Goldsmith often said, "Only in the silence will you hear what God is saying to you." This wasn't poetic language, it was literal spiritual instruction. If you're still seeking, still striving, still talking even in prayer, you may be missing the very voice you long to hear. But if you dare to become still, to enter the silence without agenda, you will begin to know what cannot be taught, only revealed. That is the doorway, and it is always open. Spiritual awakening is not an escape from the world, but a new way of living within it. Joel Goldsmith made it clear that the goal of spiritual life is not to run from the challenges of the human experience, or to reject the physical world as evil or meaningless. Instead, true awakening lifts your consciousness above the illusions of the world, while allowing you to remain fully present within it. You begin to live in the world, but no longer of it. You respond to life with wisdom and peace, not because you've withdrawn, but because you now see from a higher place. That higher place is not geographical, it's spiritual. It is Christ, consciousness operating within the world of form, but not bound by it. For many, spirituality becomes a form of avoidance. People seek mystical experiences or spiritual teachings hoping to escape pain, conflict, and uncertainty. But Joel Goldsmith taught that spiritual realization does not remove you from the world. It transforms how you experience it. The awakened person still walks among people, still faces daily tasks, still encounters situations of need and complexity. But they are no longer entangled in appearances. They see through them. They recognize that what appears on the surface, whether it's sickness, lack, or conflict, is not the final truth. The real truth lies beyond the senses, and it is always this: God is present, and God is the only power. Living above the world means you are no longer reacting to it. You do not get swept up in fear, outrage, or despair, because your foundation is not built on shifting external conditions. Your peace comes from within, from the quiet realization that God governs all, and is the very substance of your being. This doesn't make you passive. In fact, it empowers you to be more engaged, but from a place of love, not ego. You begin to serve others not to fix them, but because you see the Christ in them. You speak truth not to argue, but to bring light. You act in the world not to gain something, but to express something. This inner detachment doesn't make you cold or distant, it makes you free. Free to love without fear, free to give without expectation, free to move through joy and sorrow alike with a steady awareness of your divine nature. The storms of life may come, but they do not shake you, because your identity is rooted in something the world cannot touch. Goldsmith often described this as spiritual poise, the ability to stand still in truth, regardless of what the outer world presents. That is the fruit of awakening, not a life without challenges, but a life where challenges no longer define you. When you live above the world, you don't deny it, you see it clearly, love it deeply, and yet know that your life, your peace, and your source come from something far greater. And in that knowing, you are free.